We have a tendency sometimes when we see these measures, and particularly in Transportation Committee, and in this particular measure, it even happened in subcommittee, and that we quickly want to get to the question, and we say, do I win or do I lose? Well, ladies and gentlemen of the House, this measure, it's about more than do I win or do I lose, and we learned that when we heard the bill in subcommittee, because we were trying to ask VDOT, do I win or do I lose? And VDOT said to us, you really need to read it, because you may be winning on bridges and losing on roads. So, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, that's not what this bill is about. But what I think this bill is about, and why it is of concern to me, is I think this is a bill that takes a step towards tying the hands of the Commonwealth Transportation Board as they make the decisions. I have no reason to doubt that they're not looking at this information as they make these decisions. And I don't see any reason or any evidence that they don't try to look out for the broader good of the Commonwealth as they try to fairly look out for roads and bridges, whether they're in Bristol or whether they're in Fairfax. But clearly this bill will take a step towards tying their hands to these very definitive standards.
As a colleague mentioned to me, if you remember, those of you who are here, our old friend from out in Henrico County, it looks like we're getting ready to get Fairfaxed here. And Mr. Speaker, my concern is that, according to the gentlelady from Fairfax who spoke so eloquently just a few moments ago, it seems to me that we already know what the answer to this particular bill is going to be. It's going to be we need to give more money and send more money to Fairfax County and to Northern Virginia. And as someone who lives west of Fairfax County, is attached by Interstate 66, most of my constituents would like to change that from a 4-lane road into a 1-lane road if they possibly could, but have been unable to do that. I would say we should be very cautious in starting these sorts of regional battles that lead to results that none of us can really anticipate. Currently, the allocation system based on lane miles, I think only 19% of all of the transportation funding or around that is still distributed through the old lane mile formula. I would say as a result of that, we don't have a balkanized road system here in the Commonwealth. We have nice roads in rural areas, and I would argue roads that probably do need some improvement in the urban centers. But as a result of that, when my friends and colleagues from Fairfax decide that they want to come out and fish in the Andy Guest State Park or right across the Skyline Drive, which increasingly they tend to do, they have a nice road to get out there. And I would hate to see us take the last 18% of the road funding that is still distributed using the lane mile formula, which is what I think this bill will lead to, and make it more difficult for them to get out and visit us.
Speaker, what this bill does is it allocates money based on an objective formula. And the gentleman from Fairfax County, which has more than 1 million people, has 17 delegates, is from Northern Virginia, which has 40% of the state's population. And we have a redistricting coming up. And we need to start being fair now so that we can ask for everybody to be fair later. And therefore, I would urge everybody to support the bill.
Mr. Speaker, the gentleman from Shenandoah said that he wants to maintain roads to get out to his great place in the state of Shenandoah. The problem is I can't get there because 66 is blocked. It takes right now about an hour and a half to go 11 miles on 66 at rush hour. But this bill isn't about construction. It's not about changing the highway funding formula. It's about information. Now, let me just explain one thing because it's really confusing. I did not know this until I got into looking at the transportation laws in Virginia. There is a highway construction funding formula in the code. If you look it up, highway construction, there's a formula. Highway maintenance, there is no formula. There's no formula lane miles. There's no formula on vehicle miles traveled. There's no formula. It's whatever the Commonwealth Transportation Board decides is need. And what this bill says is nothing about that. If this bill passes, they will continue to distribute based on need. All this bill says is that they need to produce a report based upon scientific standards as to what the highway maintenance funding would be if it was based on scientific standards. This bill is information and science, which makes me wonder why some are complaining so immensely about this. And it reminds me of Hamlet. The lady doth protesteth too much, methinks. And what I'm think that the opposition is that people are afraid of what this report's going to say. They are afraid that people will learn that right now the money is going to roads and bridges that don't need it. All this bill is
Speaker,
information.
will the gentleman yield for purposes of a question?
Will the gentleman yield?
I'll yield.
Gentleman yields.
Mr. Speaker, would the gentleman agree, as he is saying, that what this does is establish an objective measure and that somehow the Commonwealth Transportation Board is sending monies where they're not needed, that current law under 33-1-1302 requires VDOT to produce a report, and the criteria are that such methodology shall, in accordance with generally accepted engineering principles and business practices, identify and prioritize maintenance and operations needs, including those for pavement, technology, bridges, and other structures, pipes, and draining and congestion management and reduction. And it then continues, the report shall include the performance standards to be used and estimate for the upcoming 2 fiscal years of the budget required to meet them, employment level goals, and the percentage of asset management under private contract. Would the gentleman agree we already have tremendous specificity that they have to go by in the code, and they have to produce this report already that is available through FOIA for any member of this body or the general public after it's released to the governor and the Commonwealth Transportation Board?
I would agree that that report exists, and that is the report the gentleman from Fairfax showed and explained it to us in his engineering fascinating speech. The problem is that, like all the reports, CTB just takes it.
Gentleman's resumed his seat.
I'd still like to respond, though, sir. The report gets produced, and then no one sees it. Did anybody in this room, except for Delegate Bulova and myself, know this report existed? No one knew the report existed. When I was at the well, one know-it-all. Oh, that's right. And I forgot a gentlelady from Fairfax. Okay, so four people knew that the report existed. The problem is that CTB produces the report and they don't use it. That's why you need to put it in the code. You have to take the extra step. First step was, can you make the report? Next step is, hey, now that you have the information, can you at least show us what it would look like if you did the allocations based upon science? This is an information bill. I'm just finding it fascinating, absolutely fascinating, that people are afraid of a report and to find out what science says. I can't, well, this place never ceases to amaze me, so.
Would the gentleman agree that the gentlelady from Fairfax rather overemphasized our needs because she didn't have a immediate recollection of the report, that in fact, as far as deficient payments, that Fairfax's deficiencies are exceeded by the Salem district deficiencies, and that the deficiencies in Hampton Roads are virtually the same deficiencies as they are in the Northern Virginia Highway District, and that further the lady was not well informed when she spoke because the number of bridges who are deficient obviously are at the highest in Bristow Highway District, with Stanton and Fredericksburg and Hampton Roads districts following behind. Would the gentleman agree that that's an accurate representation of what we know thus far?
I would agree that that the standards based on science, no one knows who's going to win and who's going to lose, because my guess is that that report will reflect that the bridges in Southwest Virginia are in very, very bad shape. And in fact, if you recall Secretary Homer showing the map of Virginia and all the deficient bridges, it was all west of 81. And they've got real problems. And I'm predicting that one of those bridges fails is going to represent transportation pandemonium over there like I have up in Northern Virginia. No one knows what the science is going to say unless you produce the report and show us how that would be done. This is all about information.